Hi, I'd like to talk a little bit with you about the safety of natural gas in buildings today. And what you're seeing here on the screen is a house that's in little tiny pieces. This happens about once a day in the United States, where there's a significant explosion of natural gas infrastructure. In this case, this was a stove that was left on and it accumulated natural gas and then it went completely gone. This is a problem that cities have to deal with. They're in charge of public safety, so it's their first responders who show up and sometimes are injured themselves when natural gas explodes because you might have called in a leak, but then the leak catches spark as soon as the fire department shows up. If you want to have a grim bit of YouTube viewing, you can go watch that happen, as I have. So cities, when they're banning natural gas or they're discouraging it through their codes, one of the findings, which is a legal statement of fact that they can be sued for if it's not true, one of the findings that they make consistently is that it's not safe for their first responders and for the neighbors to have natural gas in buildings because of the significant risk of fires and explosions. So I'm going to expand on that a little bit. In California, one of the big wake-up calls for government was the 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake. That one was during the World Series. People frequently remember. There's a big earthquake while the World Series was going on. Well, just a little bit down the road from where they were holding the World Series, there was an explosion of gas as a consequence of some of the infrastructure in the building breaking, and the San Francisco Marina District caught on fire. This, unfortunately, almost went back towards the 1906 style fires. The first piece of infrastructure to stop the fire, the first set of water hoses, that was broken. The second set of hoses and water delivering it were also broken. And only a couple years previous had San Francisco wisely put in a tertiary system of infrastructure and hoses to try to deal with earthquake fires, post-earthquake fires. And it was the community who had to grab those hoses, drag them down the street, and put out a raging wildfire that was being fueled by natural gas in addition to the wood and the rest of the building burning. This has happened a number of times now. In 1994, when there was the Northridge earthquake down in Los Angeles, half of the fires that were started were from natural gas infrastructure breaking pipes in the house, pipes in the street. You can see that massive explosion in the street there of natural gas. Flames from that went 40 feet high, damaged all the buildings nearby. So in 2010, a ruptured gas line in the San Bruno district of San Francisco, once again, that killed 8 people. There it destroyed 38 homes. There were 70 more homes that were damaged. And 2 of the people who died worked at the Public Utilities Commission in gas safety management. The irony was lost on nobody. There's actually, if you go to the Public Utilities Commission in San Francisco, their big offices, there's a carved statue of some angel-like figures to commemorate the people who died from their office, coincidentally in this fire. 5 years later, in 2015, we have the largest natural gas leak that the nation has ever seen down in the Los Angeles area, Aliso Canyon. The leak lasted for about 6 months. It sent hundreds of children home from school with mass nosebleeds. Everyone's bleeding from their nose. People are waking up and they're vomiting. There's a lot of heavy metals in the natural gas, and it caused a lot of nerve damage in people who breathed it in consistently. There was miscommunication about whether or not it was safe to stay in the neighborhood and breathe those gases. It wasn't. And that's one of the advocacy groups down in Los Angeles demanding an end to putting natural gas into communities is because of their experience of being poisoned. A few years later, the Tubbs Fire. Tubbs Fire was our first really easily documented climate change-induced fire. After a mega drought, after an extremely hot summer with record-breaking heat and heat waves, there was a huge fire. It started a little bit north of Santa Rosa. Actually, many fires that started. That fire in particular was important because it killed my mother-in-law. She lived in Santa Rosa. And as the fire was burning, gas infrastructure was accelerating the fires. There were explosions of gas infrastructure, and as structures started to catch on fire, the gas pipes would burst. and that would catch everything on with even more intensity, as if there needed to be any more intensity to that fire. So not only are there obvious examples of natural gas infrastructure blowing up in people's faces and in their lives and making it so that it's just unlivable to be near such a large disaster, there's also day-to-day dangers. So natural gas, when it's being cooked in a gas stove, it turns into about 300 different chemicals. But one of the worst is nitrogen dioxide. Nitrogen dioxide is that chemical in the air in smog that makes your lungs burn. Now, in the United States, we've had laws since the Clean Air Act back in the early 1970s that have made it so that power plants can't produce so much nitrogen dioxide that it causes asthma in the community around it.
Well, asthma is a disease based on inflammation of the lungs. So because of the lungs, the inflammation of the lungs, they become more sensitive. And if you have more sensitive lungs and you inhale air pollution, surely this is an extra factor that makes the lungs react and become worse. So people start coughing, people start getting difficulties with breathing when the air pollution goes up.
And so outside, throughout the United States, every single county in the United States is in compliance with their power plants not producing nitrogen dioxide. Unfortunately, we see levels that are that high and higher inside people's homes. Here's an illustration. On the left-hand side, you can see electric stoves cooking in the green, and you're going to see there the amount of nitrogen dioxide pollution. Now, on the right-hand side, you can see that's the outdoor limit. There's a little black dashed line. That's the most that you're allowed to pollute if you're a power plant owner. But in your kitchen, you can see on the left that you can have cooking just one gas dish can fill your kitchen with enough nitrogen dioxide that you're out of compliance if you're a power plant outside. And it can go up and up and up. This is why natural gas combustion in people's kitchens causes asthma. Unfortunately, it can also cause leukemia. The number one source of formaldehyde in people's lives is their gas stove. That's something that's been demonstrated through multiple studies. On the left-hand side, you can see a bunch of little boxes there with dotted lines, and you're seeing different examples of gas stoves producing more pollution than is legal or safe in people's homes. So there's some articles there, little strips of headlines of kids who have died from leukemia, which is a disease that comes from being poisoned with formaldehyde, like what comes off of gas stoves. And when it comes off a gas stove, it puddles around your feet. It causes poisoning to pets, small children. The more exposed they are, the less their body can handle problems when you're copying your genetics in order to make new cells. If you have formaldehyde in the mix, the copying of your genes doesn't go well. Remember, formaldehyde is that chemical that you float dead animals in and they last for hundreds of years because the chemical is so poisonous. If you're inhaling that while you're growing up, or you're a little animal that breathes in and out a lot, you are getting poisoned and there's health consequences. Leukemia is particularly tragic because it usually looks like flu when you get it, and you can be dead within weeks of not treating leukemia once the symptoms appear. So parents frequently don't have the opportunity to prevent their children from passing if it's leukemia. And that is caused by formaldehyde poisoning.